All right, well, let's go ahead. We'll get started here to give these guys a full due. You guys are lucky. You're going to get 3 or 4 instructors here, depending on how much Ryan talks. We have Jim Brocker. These guys are all from Michigan, all long-time QDMA members, branch members, supporters, and habitat extraordinaires. And I'm going to do the quick version. I'll let them talk a little bit more as they get going because I'm not going to steal the time. Jim Brocker, Jake Alinger, Ryan Radicek, and Jim Strader. I have seen some of the stuff that they have done years ago on their place in Michigan, and that was one of the big reasons that when we laid this whole thing out, we wanted something that was very hands-on for you, something that could be applied north-south, east-west, and come to folks who we knew could teach it and could do a good job with. A lot of people can do this at home and make it nice, but it takes somebody special to be able to teach it to you and teach it effectively, and they certainly can do that. So with that, I'll turn it over, Jim and Drew.
I just want to mention my friend Jake Alinger here. If you got the latest issue of Quality Whitetail, his property was covered in Loophole Landscape, so please take a look at that. I'm going to talk quite a bit about the mechanics of cutting a tree and safety today. So we're going to start off by cutting a tree conventionally with a face cut and a back cut. And then we're going to go on to hinge cutting. A lot of time is going to be spent on safety. I'll tell you right now, I got a brand spanking new pair of Sherrill Tree. And by the way, if you want to buy good arborist equipment, SherrillTree.com, 2 R's, 2 L's is where I buy most of my equipment. I just bought these chaps, and I'll show you why we wear chaps. Where's Dan Timmons? Right there. I was on Dan Timmons' property, and I did that. I had a little nick from before, but Dan and I had worked for about 5 or 6 hours. We cut several hundred trees, and towards the end I'm getting a little weary, and that's the #1 safety issue with chainsaw is getting tired. And I actually nicked mine and got Kevlar spinning around on my chain twice in 5 minutes, and I put it down and I pulled this out, and we finished the day using that. Now you guys all know how to use a chainsaw, right? How many people use a chainsaw? Okay. Men are all born knowing how to run a chainsaw, are we right? Chainsaw safety in my day, in the 1960s when I started running a chainsaw, was here, hold my beer while I start this thing up. We've gone a long way since then. We're going to be wearing protective equipment, helmet, ear protection, eye protection, chaps, whenever possible, steel-toed boots. And just try to be safe out there all the time. We're looking at what we're going to do today, or what we would do with this as a job site. And we have a customer, and his name's Lindsay Thomas. Lindsay has told us what they expect, what they would like to do with this. Now, we are what I call extreme deer habitat people. You guys, how many of you have heard of TSI? Timber Stand Improvement. Okay, timber stand improvement is a great thing. If you want to have future timber harvest, you'll hire a forester, he'll come in, mark trees, you get a logger to come in, and then you're going to cycle that. Sometime in the future, you're going to cut that again. The things that we're going to show you today, if you do these things in an area on your property, you're going to wreck everything if you ever take any timber out of there. So for people like us in Michigan, we're hunting 20, 30, 40, maybe as big as 120 acre properties. We have 5 acre woodlots. What we do is take all the timber out of them and then say, we're now going to dedicate this to the deer. So it's extreme deer habitat improvement, not timber stand improvement. Now what we got right here is a lot of beautiful white oak mass trees. And then we got a whole bunch of junk growing under it. So what he wants to do is preserve the white oaks. We're fine with that. The white oaks are a great thing. They are spread nicely, they have good crowns, and they're going to have even better crowns. So what we would recommend on this property is to leave these white oaks, and then we're going to go in and we're going to clear cut everything else. A extreme deer habitat improvement through hinge cutting is a clear cut, except you leave everything behind. And it has some major advantages over a clear cut. You get a clear cut and you got too many deer around, or you got poor soils, you're going to wait 3, 5, 7 years. I've seen some where you have to go 7 or 8 years to start getting things grown up. That's mainly because of deer pressure in northern Michigan and camp country. Here, you're not going to see that because you look around here and you can see you'll see oak seedlings all over the place here. This is not getting overbrowsed on this property. So this is going to come back really fast. The big advantage is you've got instant cover. So you hinge cut that tree, you lay it over, and now there's horizontal cover right at a deer's back, and he feels comfortable there. He'll use it the first year for bedding, for movement, for everything else. That's the advantage over a clear cut. So we're essentially doing a clear cut, but we're leaving the trees in place. What's another advantage to that? On my property in Michigan, I have hundreds of basswood trees this big around. A basswood season has not taken root in my area and grown more than a foot high since the 1950s. Because a basswood pops its head up and a deer's going to eat it instantly, unless it's next to a house or a road or something like that. Or if it's under the top of a tree that you dropped and you left there. Now you're allowing more species to come up. Same with a white oak. A white oak pops its head up in my area and it's not going to survive. So we're providing light, but we're also providing protection for those preferred browse species. Now let's talk about junk trees. How many of you heard about junk trees in TSI? You got to get rid of those junk trees, those soft maples, those box elders, those basswoods. Well, they may be junk trees if you're growing timber, but those are deer candy. And we want those stumps to stay alive. We want them to sprout up. If we let enough light in there, we'll get 6, 9, 12 feet of growth off of a maple stump in 1 year. Basswood stump will produce leaves this big around, I kid you not. And that's like deer candy. So we're not killing the stumps of the so-called. We might kill a stump of a black walnut because we're not going to grow any timber in there anymore, and black walnut is no good for deer. So we want those species that a deer wants to have. We're thinking completely different than we would in a TSI. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with a TSI. If you want to manage your property for future timber development, that's great. But if all you want to do is manage it for wildlife, you're going to think completely different about it. And a junk tree is a completely different thing than it would be otherwise. Now, I'm going to go down. We're going to start by conventionally cutting a tree. I would say that if you're going to cut a tree, get the Bible, what they call the Tree Feller's Bible. This is called To Fell a Tree by Jeff Jepson. It's available through Cheryl Tree and other sources. It will tell you everything you need to know. And even professional loggers will reread this book on a regular basis because it's so pithy with information. Most of us know how to run a chainsaw, but most of us don't know how to cut a tree because we learned it from Dad or Uncle Joe or somebody that is just passing on the wrong way to do things. What we're going to teach today is an OSHA approach that if you cut a tree in certain ways, you're going to have OSHA hammering your company if you don't do it the right way. And I'm also going to teach the way that every single one of your manuals, if you open that manual up, it tells you how to cut a tree. And almost nobody does it like that manual tells you. You just skip over that and say, how do I start this thing up and get it going? You're cutting down a good
Sir.
man. You come in a
Y'all
little closer. We're going to talk
step right
about
around
that
this
today.
way. Right there.
That is not a good white oak. It's a good looking white oak.
It's pretty white oak.
It's pretty white oak, but it's not worth anything because it's growing underneath this white oak right here. These two trees could be the same age. This one's been suppressed all its life. These sweet gums in here mean nothing from my view of this wood. And the reason is, I turn around right here, I see young oaks, I see vines growing up, I see dogwoods right there, one of them we cut. I see all kinds of species in here. Now, if you're fed up with sweet gums, all your eyes see when you walk through that wood is sweet gums. But all those sweet gums are a structure. We hinge those sweet gums, and it's just like tossing a log into a lake. And Mr. Bass, he isn't eating that log, but it's cover for him. So you get these sweet gums laying sideways like this, and yeah, they're going to sprout up. And if you have an area you want to densely cut, you're going to have to come through in a couple of years and take this handsaw and just do one swipe with it, and it's down creating cover again. But this area is not dominated by sweet gums. It's only in the mind of the landowner that those sweet gums are a problem, because I see all kinds of species here. And these would not exist here on my property. You wouldn't see these oak seedlings. They'd be gone. They'd probably be replaced by maples in most places. What we're going to do is get light in here. So there's so many young oak trees coming up that we're creating variety for the deer. We're cutting this white oak, and we will cut a lot of white oaks in here. What we want is widely spaced oaks that are good acorn producers with big crowns. This tree here is just struggling for existence. See it reaching its branches out there? We're conventionally cutting this tree, and that means putting a face cut in here. And I'm only going to teach one kind of face cut today. And I'll tell you right now, everything about how we're going to cut this tree applies to hinge cutting, except for one thing, and that's this face cut right here. The way I did this face cut is what's called a common face cut. And that's really what its name is. It's common. It's the one that most do-it-yourselfers should be doing. And why? It's the easiest one to cut. You do an angle down like this first, and then you're going to come flat back like this, and you can actually watch your saw tip as it appears down this slot. So you're eyeballing right down that slot, and it's by far the easiest way to cut. Now what's going to happen is, when we do the back cut and this tree starts to fall, this is going to close up, and when it meets, it'll pop this hinge off. So we're doing a flat back cut, a horizontal back cut, and we're going to talk about that a lot more in a few minutes. And we're leaving about 10% of the tree here. This is called the hinge. You got a hinge in conventional cutting, you got a hinge in hinge cutting. The only difference is in hinge cutting, the hinge is moved to the face of the tree. You're not doing a face cut. That makes hinge cutting more dangerous. You got a lot more control here because I can control exactly when that tree is going to go. I'm going to do a back cut until the whole cut. We've only cut it halfway here so we can be safe around the crowd. And when we finish up, we'll cut this other side of the tree. And then we're going to put a wedge in it. Why? This tree, because of its position, wants to fall in that direction right there. And the way you tell that is looking at the top 10% of the tree. And another way you can tell is just to look for a hole in the sky, because that tree is going to be reaching for a hole in the sky, and its top 10% of its branches are what is going to tell you which way it's going to fall. So this tree, if we were to come in here and cut from this direction, would fall over in that direction automatically. Here's the way to get yourself on YouTube and get 100,000, 200,000 hits. And this is how it's done. People come up and they go, wow, that's you know, might hit the house if it fell that way, so I'm going to make a real good deep cut here, and what they do is hinge cut the tree right into the house. That happens probably 50% of the mistakes you see where a tree falls in a house or car on YouTube. You can go look for yourself. I've looked at hundreds of them. The number 2 way to do it is to bring an angle cut down here, and when it's next to your house you go, wow, I'm really going to make a big angle, and that'll stop it from falling backwards. And of course what it does is it falls off the stump, the butt goes that way, the top goes that way right into the house. You can see lots of these, and when you inspect them, there's three things that go on. One is they cut too far through here and the tree releases. Number 2, they don't leave enough hinge wood. Number 3, they do a slanting down back cut, and that's, we'll show you in a few minutes. So we put this wedge in behind this. We always have a hammer and several wedges with us. Every single tree that we cut like this is going to get a wedge in behind it, because we're not geniuses. We don't always know, but there might be some backlight in that tree. This tree right here, even though it wants to go over there, is going to go right over there, because it's going to turn on this hinge just like a door. If it wants to fall backwards, it can't, because we left enough holding wood here. I called it hinge, but what's an important concept is holding wood. Think holding wood, holding wood, holding wood is the most important thing between you and getting your brain turned into soup. Because this tree can only fall where I want it to as long as I leave enough holding wood. I'm standing in a spot that has got plenty of light to it, and what do I see when I look around me? I see oaks and hickories, and I see different kinds of vines. How many sweet gums do I see here? Not very many. There's no sweet gum problem here. There's thousands of sweet gums, but they're not a problem. The main problem that they're doing is blocking light to spots like this. You get light into spots like this. If we were to go in and do that clear cut hinge cutting that I talked about, we're talking about 200 pounds per acre in under that canopy right there. We're going to turn it into 2,000. And we're going to produce huge variety of food, not just sweet gums. I'm just going to continue one more step here and talk about holding wood. We've cut this tree right here. Here's the face cut. Here's the horizontal back cut. Here's the holding wood here. And take a very careful look at that, and you will see why we say only cut about 30% into the tree. This tree has a big gaping hole in the center of it. If I were to cut halfway and have my hinge there, I've got a lot less hinge than I thought I had. We want the hinge to be in the hard wood. This face cut only exists for a space for the tree to fall in. If the tree starts to fall that way on the hinge, it can fall into that space. If it starts to rock backwards, it's caught by the kerf and the holding wood, and it can't fall over backwards. All that is a space. Everybody follow that? I overemphasize that face cut for you It should be done at about a 45-degree angle, and what will happen is when it falls, that'll hit and it'll pop that off the stump. Everybody follow that? Yes, sir.
Talk about putting a wedge in the backside.
Yep.
How do you put your chainsaw in there around that wedge?
Depends on tree size. With a smaller tree, we just bring it in at an angle like this.
Okay.
And we do wedge a lot of smaller trees over. And the reason is we want trees to fall slowly when we're hinge cutting them. We don't ever want them to fall over on their own. A tree falling over on its own when you hinge cut it, that's how you're going to break it loose. It creates an energy wave up the tree when the top hits. We want to, and we'll show you in a little while here, we're going to do a little hinge cutting. We want that to slide down through other trees and slowly make its way to the ground, or we want to ease it down by pulling it down, or we want to slowly wedge it over. It's extra work, but you're going to keep a lot more trees alive doing that. And if I cut a white oak this size and I can hinge cut it and get it to stay alive, it's going to feed far more deer year-round than it would ever feed in acorns. Because the deer are going to come, they're going to browse off of this, and it's going to regrow, and they're going to browse, and it's going to regrow for years and years and years. This is going to produce stress period food. It's not just during that few weeks when the acorns are falling. So don't be afraid to cut white oak. Now those of you that live where I do, I wouldn't be able to cut any white oaks in Michigan now because, you know, they tell us not to do it in the summer because of oak wilt disease. We're back on safety again. So now I got a bigger chainsaw in my hand. I mean, a lot of you guys got your farm bosses and stuff like that you use for your firewood. Now you're going to go out and start hinge cutting with it. One of the riskiest things we do when we're hinge cutting is we want deer to be able to walk under these things, so we're going to be reaching up like this. And OSHA tells you not to do that. So we're automatically breaking rules when we hinge cut. You got to live with that. It's like lots of things, not wearing your life belt in your boat or whatever. But we're going to try and be as safe as we can about it. One of the ways you can be safe is to know how to cut the tree, how to hold the saw. I want to hold the saw just like this. I'm a little guy and this is a big old saw. And I can use this all day long. If I'm going to be on this side of the tree and I'm going to cut low, I'm going to keep my hand right down here and I'm just going to go like this and I'm going to cut way out on the end of my bar. I'm standing out away from this tree. Look at how my face is out of the way from the tree, but I'm still balanced. If I want to cut up here, I just flip it over like that, and now I've got all the weight. I'm using my upper arms to do this. You don't want to be doing this. When I do this, I'm leaning into the tree. I've got my arm here in a dangerous position, and I'm going to wear my butt out. And that's how I cut into my chaps at the end of the day. So down here, and if you can't use your bar like that and chew through and throw chips, go sharpen your saw or get a new chain. Most of you guys do not sharpen your chain often enough. It ought to be just about every time you go out. And then it's easy. Nothing easier than sharpening a chainsaw. But you have to do it when it can be sharpened, not wait until you hit a fence or something, then go, you know, spend an hour trying to sharpen that, because you might as well throw it away. If I'm on this side of the tree, it's exactly the opposite. I'm still holding the saw exactly like I did. Down here, I'm like this. Up here, I'm like this. My body's leaned out away. If I were to try and do this, look at my head leaning in there. Same thing over here. If I try and do what most guys want to do, cut with the bottom of their bar, I'm leaning in like this instead of standing back like this. This is probably as important a thing as there is to keep safe and not wear yourself out through the day. You don't have to memorize this. Keep your hand here and do what feels comfortable. I'm leaning on a tree that is completely cut, but it's completely stable too. I have to push it to get it to go over, but it's completely cut all the way through. That is stable. Gravity is helping me. Gravity is my friend. This is an angle cut tree. You want to watch your feet there. Let's see how stable this is. Watch what happens to the top of it. Angle cut tree, people do it because they think they're creating a backstop. What they're really doing is causing that, if that breaks loose. And remember, we're not cutting this properly because we're going to have an accident. We're doing it in case we have an accident. It's just like a seatbelt in your car. You don't wear a seatbelt because you're going to have an accident. You can go 300,000 miles, 1,000,000 miles in a car without wearing your seatbelt. You're wearing the seatbelt in case you have an accident. We're doing a proper horizontal back cut in case we cut through too far. If I cut this through too far, it's going to go the opposite direction I want it to go. I want you guys to count with me now. Can everybody see? I'm going to do an angle cut right now. $31, $32, $33. That's just about loose. $34. Okay. Can you help me with it? Put a little bit too much. Okay, that's 34, right? Six. And it's probably just as loose. Let me do 7. Let's be fair. 7. What's happening here? There are two things. I'm cutting further, and I'm cutting with the grain. This is a crosscut saw. Your chainsaw is a crosscut saw as well. It's meant to chip wood out across the grain. You do an angle cut. Let's say you're doing a 4-inch tree and you want to go 3 inches through it. You're cutting 4.2 inches with a 45-degree angle cut versus 3 inches. You do 100 trees, you've just got 10 extra feet of wood. Also that you can make a weaker hinge. And you get in there and you smell it, and it smells like a locker room for Green Bay Packers. Because these guys stink. These big old bucks stink. They go through all that running, peeing all over their legs, and they don't take a shower. So all winter long, that buck bed is going to stink. So you know when you see a buck bed, and what do you see when you see a buck bed? You see a backstop usually, a fallen tree, snag. You see overhanging limbs. You see an escape route out the back and out the front. And normally this would be brush right here. We don't want him to see very far on our property. We don't want him, being able to scope out a square mile. We use this handsaw to do all this work in here. This handsaw right here that I can cut halfway through that tree with. You can go right to the hardware store up here and you can buy yourself a real piece of junk for $14.95. And after you use it for a few days, you start having to work harder and harder. This thing I can almost do 3 cuts and go through this tree with. It's called a Silky Zubot. There are other good models. But get yourself a good handsaw. You'll pay $70 for this instead of buying a $14.95 one every year or every 2 years. So we did all this work, and that's a big message to you guys is you do not have to have a chainsaw to do a lot of damage in your woods. Now up here we got a doe bedding area. What's the difference? Bucks are loners. They hang out alone. If they hang out in groups, they still want to be alone. Jake and I drove up here together, and so we're a bachelor group, but we're not sleeping in the same bed together. If we do, I get to choose a position. That's the same with the bucks. So you might have 6 or 8 of those. You want enough so that 3 or 4 of them can lay around, but they're not going to sleep with each other. But the does, they all want to be in together. So we put logs in here, we rake them out, and come in with ground clear, 1-year herbicide, and treat that ground with it. So, 2 types of bedding area, one social and one antisocial for us men. Now we're going to come on up here. We got 3 types of hinge cutting we're doing. This is a tornado zone. We're going to do bedding, tornado zones, transition zones. Tornado zone's a barrier. We took this tree and then we just crisscrossed and dropped every tree behind it right onto its top. Nothing's going to go through there now. You don't like your neighbors coming on your property, just do this along your property line. We do this on our property lines, and we also do it because we want to come into a stand over there. We got our bedding right here, and we want a visual barrier. It's also an audio barrier, and it's a barrier for traffic, so we're making the deer come around, and we're going to walk over here. By the way, those, you see how high those are. Deer needs to be able to walk under that, and he needs to stand up when he sees a predator and be able to run in a hurry. So having them crouch down in rabbit cover doesn't do you any good. And I see so many images of people cutting too low for bedding cover for deer. You need to be up here where that deer can stand up about this high and lunge. Then for this, we want it low, high, everywhere. Just a tangled mess. And then over here, we're going to do a transition zone. Just like we did for the bedding area, but nobody's going to bed in here. Because around it, we're leaving open area. we want them to pass through here. If you make a 5-star hotel over there, your deer are not going to sleep in a Motel 6. They only have to go another 50 yards to get over to the 5-star hotel. So you can do all the hinge cutting you want here. You have to do it intelligently. We're doing it so that the deer, we got pull downs here, can go through, they can duck their heads as they're going through, and we're going to have a stand maybe 20 or 30 yards in there. And that last time they duck their heads up, they're going to get stuck with a pointed stick, hopefully. And that's because we position them appropriately. But they're not going to stop here for very long. It's a transition area. They're trying to make their way to something. I heard somebody in one of the talks say they're always going to something when they get up. Well, yeah, they are. So this is a transition zone. If you walk over here, you can see what we've done is hinge cut parallel to it. Especially for your mature bucks, you don't want to close them in there. Every step they take, they want to know that they can make a lateral jump and get out of there. So if you close them in too much, they won't use it. No families might use it. The mature deer won't use it. Everybody follow that? 3 kinds of hinge cutting. This is a tool, Jameson pole. It's an arborist tool that you can buy at Sherrill Tree. And what we do is we reach up and we pull trees down with it. And you can get really good leverage with it, and it's really light and easy to use. It's about, I can't even remember how much it is. The other thing you can do with it is take a rope, loop it up over here, put it up over a branch, and get some distance away and help guide a tree down. So it's a real handy tool. We have specific tools that are made, and all these are coming out of Michigan. We got lots of guys in Michigan doing this. This is made by Nick Nations. It's a pull down tool. It expands out. It's got teeth here to grab a tree and pull it down. And it's got this. I can pull a tree down here and hold it down, stand on this, and I can tie that tree off to another tree. So it's a real handy tool. This one here is the one I use the most. This is made by Rich Hutton in Michigan. They're going to be $100. Those are $60. This is going to be $120 on the market. It's made out of aluminum, so it's real light and easy to use. So let's get fired up.
Okay.
Where did you want to start?
I'll go right into this.
These 2 right here. Hold it.
Damn. Got you close up.
So that's basically all we're doing. We might go through and do a couple of acres like that. And then we will come out back through it and figure out where the best place is. Sometimes we'll screw up a tree. It'll end up on the ground. And I'm getting a little winded in this Georgia heat. And we're just going to go through like that. We don't care about these oaks. These oaks are no good for nothing. That red oak right there is what we want. That white oak right there. Thank you, sir. Any questions?
So you go through and you hinge cut the whole 2 acres, and then you go back through to make your bedding?
Yep.
Let's talk about big trees first.
Big trees first. Always big trees first. Because if you go through and make a little structure like this, then we would put a lot more down on this. You make a structure like this and drop a big tree on it, you're all done. That's why you're not going to do timber in here after this. You spent a lot of time and work creating structures, and you don't want to smash a tree down on it and see what it looks like after a skidder drives through it. So people that are doing this extensively, let's say you're going to do 3, 5, 6, 7 acres, are never going to take a stick of timber out of there again. You're going to catch them all when they're young. These oak trees we just cut, they're going to stand up and have a great lunch off of that oak tree forever, as long as it stays alive. And we would, if we were really building a bedding area here, we'd be pulling these other trees down, tying them off so they stay alive. They create shade in the summer. We like having these slopes like this that are a little bit away from the sun. In a southern area, in a northern area, you might want to have some that are facing towards the sun for the winter. Lots of thought goes into it. We barely touched on the surface of it today, but I most of all hope that you will approach from a safety standpoint, approach things hopefully a little bit different than you may have in the past. Any other questions?
Jim, how would you approach, I mean, a lot of our property is riverbed in the UP, Upper Peninsula, which has cedars, hemlocks, pines. I mean, there's no small trees. They're all big trees. So
that's a really good question, Kevin. And Jake does some work in northern Michigan, but let me just talk about these monocultures. And you see them in Georgia. We must have driven for 50 miles with nothing but pine trees, tall, canopied pine trees. I can make a deer go wherever I want to in those pine trees. And that's just by cutting a swath through it. So you got a big deer desert in the pine forest in northern Michigan, and let's say you got some food in the distance, and you got a bedding area. You just take about a 60-yard swath of that woods and take every other pine tree and knock it down. They will not survive. There's species that won't survive, but you've created cover, and those deer are going to use that pathway. And the reason I do 60 yards is because I can shoot my crossbow 30 yards. So I sit right in the middle of that, and I can catch them in both sides. And what I will do is, if I'm going to do that, I'll have a swath down the middle of it that they can't penetrate, and I'll sit there and let my scent blow straight down that swath. Then they have to come around the edges of that in that cover, and then they meet right out in front of me. There's things that you can do with hinge cutting to set up your stand site that makes the deer go only one place. You know, a lot of you guys like to sit with a pond to your back, right? Because the deer are going to quarter around it into the wind. You can do exactly the same thing by making a tornado zone behind you, and it only needs to be 50, 60, 70 yards wide. Did that at all answer your question?
Well, I mean, I wish I had small trees. I mean, there's some virgin timber cedars on there, and you know, some are.
Yeah,
4
you
feet
will
away.
have. You need to cut those cedar trees.
You'll have to follow them first.
Yep.
And then
Yes, sir.
work with any small.
What's the best time of year, and like how long will the bedding area start to take?
You know how they used to say, and it's used to say after hearing, I think it was CJ talk the other day, that when's the best time to shoot a doe? Whenever you can get her in your sights. The best time to hinge cut a tree is whenever you can have the time to do it. And a lot of you guys are working, you have your weekends. Go hinge cut the tree. It doesn't matter that much that these main trees stay alive. What they're doing is creating structure that we can bring other trees down on. Will they do better if you do it in winter? Especially some species, yes. I don't cut poplars in the summer unless they just happen to be in my way. I'm not going to go in and cut a poplar stand except when they're dormant, because I know 2 months into that following summer I'm going to have poplar trees this high. Another year I'm going to have them 6, 8 feet high, and I'm already going to be hinge cutting them. So having all that, everything sucked back into the root system with certain kind of trees that are going to sprout mainly from the root system, you want to do that in winter. But all these other trees, oaks, they'll survive real well with summer cuts. Hickories are great. You can get most of your hickories, of any species of hickory, subspecies, you can get most of them to survive. Oaks are really good. White oaks are really good. Maples can be a little bit tougher, but that's where that soft landing comes in. Your soft maples will rip off, but we try and get them to brush down, and we even get under them and slowly bring them down. Try to get them to not go past horizontal, because if they go back past horizontal, you're pinching that vascular system.
Once you create the deer beds, I mean, how important is it to clear out I mean, it needs to be dirt forever, right? There should be no sticks inside that bed, correct?
You want a clean spot for them to lay down in. We don't necessarily make a lot of beds like that one. What we do is just find spots where we think a buck would want to lay down or a doe group would want to lay down, and we clean it up and we spray it with ground clear. You come in. I will tell you, I did a video this year, a 2-part video for our Whitetail Ambush Secret website. We just walk through my area with the camera running, and I have probably 150 beds in there that we looked at that are just spots for every single one of them had hair in them, except for 2, and that's where logs had fallen down in front of the entrances, the main entrance to them. 2 buck beds that weren't used. And that teaches you something. You have to go in your sanctuary. I know people were well-meaning back in the days when sanctuaries were created, and they said don't ever go in them. If you have a small property and you're not going in your sanctuary, you got a mess in there. The deer are deciding what to do with it. I have a stand up through this snake trail right here, up on the hill. I got no idea whether a tree fell down in there. And the deer are not even going to come by my stand. I go, where the hell are they? The DNR's taking too many deer, blah, blah, blah. It's because I didn't go in and clean that trail out. And I'll tell you, every single trail that I have coming to my stands, just about every year, has got to be cleaned up because a tree fell down, especially with the emerald ash borer that we have going on now. Those ash trees are just falling a mile a minute. I got to be in there really several times a year. As long as your deer don't have hard antlers, it's okay. The bucks are a completely different species, and the doe knows what you had for lunch anyway. She knows you. I'm Farmer Jim or Lumberjack Jim when I'm up there. They all know me. As soon as I leave on a trail camera in the summer, they'll show up.
So what's the ground clear? I'm not familiar.
It's you can get any good 1-year herbicide. The ground clear is sold in Tractor Supply. It comes in a brown bottle, and it's called ground clear. That's why it's an easy one to talk about. We have maybe 10 seconds. Anybody else?
Is it
We will hang around as long as you guys want and answer your questions.
A lot of the stuff that's available. Obviously, the Red Door magazine, and let's give a big round of applause. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Next session is coyote trapping, which is right here to the left. Maybe tree planting. Bob Wall. So I needed it to keep it down the street. Down here to the right a little bit. We got a couple big ones.